Forget haunted houses, the most terrifying curses were sealed in tomb and written on ancient pages. What if the past isn't just a story, but a living, breathing entity, one that holds a grudge? Across cultures and centuries, humanity has whispered warnings about disturbing what should remain buried, about breaking taboos etched in stone and blood. These aren't just superstition, they are narrative blueprints for some of the most terrifying stories ever told. Tonight, we delve into the shadowy realm where ancient wrath meets modern folly, counting down the 10 greatest horror movies about ancient curses. These are tales where the punishment is meticulously crafted, often centuries in advance, waiting for the arrogant, the greedy, or the grieving to finally trigger its dreadful mechanism. At number 10, we find a curse not of tombs or grimoires, but of karmic justice written on the human body itself, Thinner. Based on a Stephen King novel, this film presents a hex of terrifying simplicity. A wealthy, corrupt lawyer strikes and kills an elderly Romani woman with his car, and uses his connections to evade any legal consequence. But true justice arrives not from a court but from the victim's father, who places a single chilling word upon the man's cheek, Thinner. This is no modern spell, but an ancient blood magic, a curse that compels the body to consume itself from within. The horror is slow, inevitable, and utterly inescapable. There are no ghosts to reason with, no demon to exorcise, only the relentless physical decay as the curse enforces a brutal balance of the scales. It's a visceral reminder that some forms of justice operate on a plane far older and more absolute than our own. Our number 9 film trades the open road for the claustrophobic confines of a morgue in The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Here, science itself becomes the gateway to the supernatural. A father and son coroner team, men of logic and procedure, are tasked with examining the perfectly preserved, unidentified body of a young woman. As their scalpels peel back layer after layer, they uncover impossible anatomical anomalies, burns around unbroken skin, lungs shredded from the inside, and organs bearing marks of profound, ancient trauma. The curse in this film is not a spoken word, but a ritualistic punishment inflicted centuries ago. Jane Doe is revealed to be a victim of the Salem witch trials, subjected to a Puritan blood curse so potent it transformed her into an immoral vessel of vengeance. Her very corpse is a supernatural landmine. The act of autopsy triggers a cascade of reality-warping horrors, forcing rational men to confront a malice that defies every scientific principle they hold dear. The terror becomes personalized and brutally ironic in our number 8 pick, Tarot. A group of friends, looking for a bit of fun, uses a beautifully ornate but clearly antique deck of tarot cards for a casual reading. They are unaware that the deck is a prison, bound by a death curse cast in the 18th century by a wronged occultist. The genius of this curse is its cruel specificity. It doesn't kill at random. Instead, the exact card a person draws determines the manner of their demise, summoning a unique, demonic entity tailored to that fate. The Hierophant, the Magician, the Hanged Man, each becomes a death sentence manifest. The film weaponizes the concept of destiny, trapping its characters in a lethal game where their own choices, the cards they pulled, seal their horrifying, inescapable ends. Number 7 shows us that a curse need not be a spell, but can be an object, a beautiful, reflective prison for a malevolent force. In Oculus, the Lasser glass is an antique mirror with a history of death stretching back to the 18th century. Its power is insidiously psychological. It doesn't house a monster you can see, it houses a presence that meticulously dismantles your perception of reality. The curse of the Lasser glass is one of profound manipulation. It feeds on isolation and time, making its victims see and hear terrifying illusions, ultimately tricking them into acts of violence against loved ones or themselves. The mirror turns the mind into its own enemy, creating a haunting scenario where you can never trust your own eyes, your own memories, or even the person standing beside you. The true ancient evil here is the erosion of sanity itself. From psychological terror, we journey to a curse rooted in the very earth with number 6, Exuma. This South Korean masterpiece weaves together generational trauma, national history, and geomantic terror. A wealthy family, plagued by a mysterious bloodline affliction, hire a team of shamans and a feng shui master to relocate their ancestors' grave, a practice known as Exuma. But upon unearthing the coffin, they discover something far more sinister than a restless spirit, a cursed iron stake driven deep into the burial plot, a malicious spell designed to sever the spiritual spine of the land and torment the family for generations. This curse is a poison in the soil, a literal embedding of historical sin and colonial brutality that, once released, unleashes a primal, folkloric entity. It's a powerful metaphor for how the wounds of the past, if carelessly excavated, can rise up with a violent, hungry fury. Sam Raimi's glorious, ghoulish roller coaster, Drag Me to Hell, takes the number 5 spot with a curse that is both terrifying and darkly comedic. After loan officer Christine Brown denies an extension to a seemingly frail Romani woman, she becomes the target of a classic no-holds-barred blood hex. The rules are laid out with dreadful clarity. She will be tormented for 3 days by a demonic spirit called the Lamia, after which her soul will be dragged to hell for eternity. The curse here is presented as a supernatural contract, a set of brutal bylaws that Christine must desperately, and often messily, try to loophole her way out of. Raimi masterfully blends visceral body horror with slapstick comedy, creating a uniquely frenetic and unforgettable tale of ancient vengeance crashing into modern, bureaucratic life. The number 4 film introduces a curse that weaponizes the act of witnessing. Sinister follows true crime writer Ellison Oswalt, who moves his family into a house where a gruesome murder occurred, hoping to find inspiration. In the attic, he discovers a box of AMM film reels labeled with innocuous titles like Family Hanging Out 98. What he actually finds are snuff films depicting entire families, including children, being murdered. His investigation reveals these films are not just recordings, they are cursed artifacts, invocations for an ancient Babylonian deity named Bagrul, the eater of children. The curse is activated by viewing the footage. The more Ellison obsessively watches, drawn in by his own morbid curiosity, the deeper the ancient evil sinks its hooks into his own family. It's a curse that preys on obsession, turning the pursuit of knowledge into a direct conduit for supernatural predation. A grief so profound it can make a sane man do the unthinkable powers. Our number 3 entry, Pet Cemetery. Beyond the quaint pet cemetery in the woods of Maine lies an ancient Micmac burial ground, a place where the ground is sour. This land holds a corrupted, ancient power. It can bring the dead back. But as the wise old neighbor Judd Crandall warns, sometimes dead is better. When Dr. Louis Creed's young son is killed, his overwhelming grief overrides all warning, and he buries the boy in that sour earth. The curse here is the land's seductive, monstrous promise. It doesn't restore life. It returns a grotesque, soulless imitation, stripping away all humanity and leaving behind only a violent, predatory instinct. The ancient power of the burial ground manipulates the most powerful human emotion, a parent's love, into creating its own most terrible abomination. Our runner-up at number 2 is the film that defined an entire genre of ancient wrath, the original 1932 classic, The Mummy. Unlike its action-packed successors, Boris Karloff's Imhotep is a monument of slow-burning, patient dread. The curse is triggered not by a random accident, but by a deliberate, arrogant act. An archaeologist reads aloud from the Scroll of Thoth, despite the explicit, dire warnings carved on Imhotep's casket. This act of sacrilege breaks a seal placed millennia ago, awakening the mummified high priest to enact his vengeance. The terror of this curse is in its historical weight and inevitability. It is a sentence passed down through the ages, finally executed upon modern interlopers who believed themselves immune to the consequences of the ancient world. It established the timeless template, disturb the rest of the dead, and you inherit their eternal fury. And finally, claiming the number 1 spot is the film that unleashes ancient evil with unbridled, chaotic ferocity, The Evil Dead. 5 friends vacationing in a remote Tennessee cabin discover the Naturam de Monto, the Book of the Dead, a tome bound in human flesh and inked in blood, containing Sumerian burial rites and demonic invocations. When they play a tape recording of its incantations, they don't just summon a ghost or a single monster, they trigger a cataclysmic, localized apocalypse. The curse here is a contagion of pure, demonic possession. It turns the forest and the cabin into a closed ecosystem of violence, systematically transforming friends and lovers into cackling, monstrous deadites. This is not a curse that haunts or manipulates, it invades body and soul with relentless gore and visceral terror. It presents ancient evil not as a subtle specter, but as an overwhelming, physical force, where survival demands not just courage, but a willingness to engage in grotesque, brutal dismemberment.